Hello, good morning. I'm Sila Schulman, and I'm really honored to have Nadav Kidron with us and Dr. Prabhuda Kundu. They will talk about a new vaccine that they are developing. We know that we have now in the world just 16% of the people fully vaccinated against COVID. And we know also that all the process of vaccination is very expensive and they need a lot of people, so they have a really new way of doing that. So I'll give the word to Nadav Kidron from Oramed to present himself and present the
Thank you very much for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm very excited to share with you because we live in a world that it feels like things are going up and down all the time. You know, it seems like COVID is about to disappear and it's coming back with the different variants, and there's a lot of uncertainty in the world. And thankfully, science, and I'm very happy to say that Israel has been one of the leaders in the world when it comes to development, not only in the high-tech and cyber, but also in the science world. And I'll be very happy to share with you some of the very exciting developments that we've been working on. So just as a way of introduction, my name is Nadav Kidron. I'm the founder of Oramed. Oramed Pharmaceuticals is a publicly traded company on NASDAQ, which has a technology that allows us to take injection and deliver them orally. And the idea that when you take something and you give it orally instead of an injection sounds obvious from the patient's compliance side, but there's much, much more to it, as we're going to hear very soon. Our main product is actually oral insulin for diabetics, which is undergoing a phase 3 in the United States right now. And about a year ago, we started a very exciting collaboration with one of the leading companies out of India, Primus Biotechnology. Primus, which we are very honored to have Dr. Kundu with us, who's the CEO and a co-founder of Primus, has been a very well-known company out of India that they're at the cutting edge of technology. And they came up with a vaccine that, unlike the other vaccines that we have today, and Prabhuda will explain it better than me, this vaccine can be one thing that can help us against all the variants that exist and all the variants that will exist. That's a huge game changer. And then Primus brought that technology, and together with Oramed, we took Oramed's technology that allows us to take injection orally, and we tried to take the vaccine and to give it orally. And we started with animals, and thankfully, it worked. So it opened the door to a new world where you can actually take a pill, and we swallow the pill, you actually vaccinated. And not only are you vaccinated against the variants. And the advantage of the oral is of a few folds. Number one, more people will take it. Number two, less side effects. Everybody who took the Pfizer or Moderna, maybe not on the first shot, maybe not on the second shot, maybe on the third shot, many people suffer from side effects. When you give it orally, we shouldn't be experiencing the same side effects. But then also logistically, think about it. When we want to vaccinate an entire nation, an entire world, you need someone professional to administer a shot. But if you take it orally, it's very simple. Potentially, you can let people take it at their own. And more than that, think about the waste. All the syringe and plastic that here you swallow a pill and you're basically done. So we started this development under a company called Oravax, and we are extremely excited about this. We want to start the clinical trials very, very, very soon in South Africa and Israel, and hopefully then we also going to make it to South America. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to ask Prabuddha to give a little bit of a background. You know what, maybe I'll just before you speak, maybe I'll just do the quick intro video, and then we're going to hear Prabuddha, which again, I want to thank you again for making the time to be here with us. Let me just do this.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So after the presentation, we're going to have a Q&A. So if you want to send us questions, I will be happy to make them after the presentation.
Imagine a world with an oral COVID-19 vaccine.
As the world races to vaccinate people against the COVID-19 virus, the effort is hampered by the need to keep vaccines at freezing temperatures and have qualified people administer the shots. Imagine if the shots would be required every year or every 6 months. But what if the vaccine could be taken as a pill in the comfort of your own home? An oral vaccine can help quickly vaccinate the most vulnerable and people in remote areas. Oravax, a company based on Oramed Pharmaceuticals' patented oral delivery technology, is developing an oral COVID-19 vaccine. Oravax's vaccine in development, should it be approved, would not have to be kept at below freezing temperatures and would not have to be administered at central locations. An oral vaccine that could pave the way to a pandemic-free world.
Okay.
So Dr. Prabuddha, you want to make your presentation now?
Yeah, thank you so much. Let me just share my screen.
Dr. Prabuddha is directly from India. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Not at all. I'm not sure why it's not coming on. Can you see this?
Not yet.
I would just tell you in the meantime that the amount of vision that it takes to develop what Prabuddha and his team has done is really tremendous, because you start with the concept. And for those who are not in the field, it's really, you have to put a lot of effort, a lot of money, a lot of time, and you never know what's exactly going to come out. So when they came out in the first time and they said, this vaccine seems to work, it was like an unbelievable, it's like bringing a new baby to the world.
Thank you so much. And good morning to everyone, and good afternoon if somebody's joining us from Europe. But no, Nadav, thank you so much for your kind introduction, and to everyone. And I'm very grateful to the Brill Chamber for giving us this opportunity to present the world's first triple antigen oral SARS-CoV-2 vaccine. And as Nadav has given us a very generous introduction, I think I'll straight away dive into the work. Is my slides visible?
Yes, thank you.
So just to keep it on a very top high level, all of us know that the SARS-CoV-2 virus has primarily on its surface what we know as the spike protein. That is the protein that does the handshake when it enters the human cell. And so that was the first protein or the antigen that became the target for all our vaccine first generation development. However, as a company, Premise had worked on SARS or coronaviruses along with animal health companies based in US and Europe. And in the animal health world, it is known that the coronaviruses do mutate. The ones that do not mutate is the M protein and the E protein. These proteins remain stable and there is very little mutation, while spike mutates a lot, and we are seeing the variants of concern across the globe. But all the three proteins are on the surface of the virus, which means potentially they can become the rationale is that all the three could become potential antigens for an overarching vaccine. And that's what we took as much as 18 months ago. So on my left is the cartoon of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, where you see the spike protein on the surface. There is some other protein called membrane and another protein called envelope. And this is on your right-hand side is what we see is the actual virus-like particle. So what do? We take these three proteins, we use significant molecular biology and other skills to make it inside a host artificially. When we do it artificially, what it happens is it resembles the virus to your immune system, but what happens is it does not have any of the bad effects, which means it cannot replicate, it cannot propagate, it cannot infect. So it's basically like a car without the engine. So it looks like a car, but it can't go anywhere. And being a protein vaccine, it is considered extremely safe. The world knows it. So I will not go into this, but as Nadav very correctly pointed out, there is a huge reduction in the plastic waste. It's in hundreds and thousands of tons of plastic waste. It's extremely easy for logistics. It does not need cold storage. We did a calculation, 61% of the world does not have access to cold storage or ultra low temperature storage. It's extremely easy to administer. And what we see is what other vaccines don't give, which are injectable, is what we call a mucosal response. That means you get antibodies in the nose and the mucosa. And this is where the virus really enters from, because if you think the word SARS is a severe acute respiratory virus, which means it goes in from the nose. So we see significant mucosal response in the animal trials that we've conducted. So how did this come about? We are very fortunate to have been partnering Oramed on their pod technology for over 8 years. We've been partnered. This is our 9th year of partnership, to which I'm extremely grateful to Nadav and Miriam, who was the CSO of Oramed. The fact that the oral insulin pill is in phase 3 gave us a lot of confidence that the formulation would be primarily safe. So what happened was, this is the pill. You have all the other components the same, except the insulin, in which you dry out the formulation and you put it in. And it's a very interesting story, if I may actually get into it. It's somewhere around December, January, our COO, Nupur, and Miriam was the CSO, Dr. Miriam Kidron of Oramed, sat down and said, is there a way to freeze dry or make the liquid vaccine into powder? If they had asked me as a protein scientist, perhaps I would have been very conservative and said, no, it's not possible. But these two ladies, all strength to them, they went ahead and freeze dried it. And to our remarkable surprise, the structure of the VLP, or the virus-like particle, remained intact despite not being in a liquid media. So there have been a number of innovations and learning which has added to and will hopefully add to a lot of the science of vaccines and oral vaccine delivery. In many ways, if you consider, this is actually pushing the envelope of vaccine delivery. Everyone wants an oral formulation. It's perhaps evaded us And with this SARS-CoV-2 triple antigen vaccine, which is acting like a virus-like particle, we may have that opportunity to fuse with the pod platform. It is room temperature stable. We have stability over now 4 months. We see its interest. We make this vaccine in yeast, baker's yeast. And to many of you who may be on the call today, baker's yeast is known for a long, long time to the biotech world. It is considered safe. There are a number of vaccines in the world which have been made in yeast, primarily because it's cost effective, easy to manufacture, tech transferable. I mean, we could teach some people very easily how to scale up in very, very large numbers. And it's extremely consistent. Not only that, the technology that we've developed, Decrypt, we've been working over it for nearly 12 years. So it's not an overnight success, but a consistent decade-old work into making this platform come alive. There are two versions, the intramuscular or the injectable, but today we are going to talk about the oral. But there, you would also like to know that both in the injectable, it's considered to be extremely safe. We've done mice, rat studies, GLP tox, and the antibody response is over 150 days. So it's pretty safe, even as an injection. Coming to the oral version, it's dried. It has shown excellent safety. It has shown pretty much non-toxic effects in both mice and pig study. And most importantly, all the three arms of your immune system, the IgM, IgG, and IgA response has been seen. This is not really true for many of the injectable vaccines. The IgA is primarily antibodies which are in your mucosal surface, or your nose, the throat. And so this is right response that we want. And most of the virologists and immunologists that we've shown the data to have been very, very impressed. Just to give you a highlight, that this is the day zero when you first take the pill. In pigs, we've given it, and in day 42, you can see the climb of the antibody. That means it is responding, and this is very similar to how it happens in your injectable form. And the remarkable thing is the injectable form sees your immune system immediately because it's injected. However, when you ingest it, it takes time, but we see that your gut also has a very, very good immune system. And that's how we see the response. And not only do we see the response to the VLP alone, but we also have confirmed that you see antibodies against the spike protein, you see the antibodies against the membrane protein, and you see the antibodies against the E protein, because that's important. Or else the regulators could ask you, why are you giving 3 proteins? And this forms the basis of why we believe it will be resistant against variants, because even in the variants, the M and the E are not changing. And to any of you who suffered from COVID and have recovered, you would know the first thing which happens to you is you get a headache, you get body aches, you get diarrhea. So that is modulated by the M protein entering your body. It forms channels or tunnels in your cells, and the ions leave. You know, when you sweat a lot, they say you please take a good drinks of salts. You're replacing your ions. It's the same thing. When you lose ions, you get diarrhea. And later on, in very severe cases, you get water in the lungs or what's called edema. The E protein is primarily responsible for what we call the cytokine storm, or the inflammation, where you see patients getting, relatively healthy, getting better, and suddenly dying within 24 hours. That is primarily caused by the E protein. So now science is coming back. We've seen the US FDA, the NIAID, including Dr. Fauci, now claiming and asking for multi-antigenic. It's all over the internet. You could Google and see multi-antigenic vaccines, maybe the second wave generation. And we believe this is already there. And we are very fortunate that if we can get the phase 1 trial in Israel and South Africa kicking off, and then we have plans to take it to other places, including South America, and we are exploring both in Asia as well. The interesting thing is the IgA response, and we see in a blinded study in the colon and nasal, where we've taken washings from the pig, we see significant antibody response in the nasal area. And the production process, where you see in this situation, is very simple. You just grow it for about 24 hours. You produce for 48 hours, and it takes 48 hours. The amazing thing is that you could make millions of doses in 10 days because this is done in baker's yeast. And there's many other data that I have, but it's fine. Maybe we can discover this over some questions. So just to sum up, it's an oral formulation. It's lyophilized but dry, but it retains the 3 antigens. It has shown excellent safety, non-toxicity, and efficacy in animal trials. It has both antibody response as well as a T-cell response, and more importantly, it has an IgA response with a very high PRNT50 data. So much so, we are actually given to one of the WHO labs here, and they had to do it 3 times because they could not imagine the response in IgA. With that, I'll stop sharing slides and happy to turn it over to you, Nadav.
Thank you, Prabhuda. Maybe I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview where we stand with it, and then right afterwards we can open it for questions. Usually when we want to take a vaccine and get it approved, we have quite a lengthy via de la rosa that we have to go through in order to get all the regulatory approvals. What we've been seeing in the world these days in the corona is that just, I think 2 weeks ago, Pfizer got the approval for their vaccine, but tens of millions of people got it way earlier because it was under an emergency use approval. Our plan is to do the same with this Oravax vaccine, and the idea is to actually start with the emerging markets, such as South America and alike, where they're a little bit behind on the vaccine supply, and hopefully they can jump ahead of the line by getting the Oravax vaccine. Countries such as some of the countries in South America may be interested in allowing and granting the emergency use approval in order for them to be able to stop the issue of the COVID-19. And as Prabhuda explained very well, we believe that this Oravax vaccine can be a one-stop shop that basically can really take care of the corona. And unlike what we see now that in Israel, they're getting the 3rd booster, and we're going to start talking maybe about the 4th and 5th, and I'm sure many of you got all the funny clips about the people that don't have room in their body for the next booster. We believe that the Oravax vaccine may be the answer, where you take 1, maybe 2, and we're basically done because we're not worried about the variants anymore. So just before we open it up for questions, I just want to show you a quick video also to give you an overview about the Oramed and the oral insulin, and then we can basically jump into it. 1 second.
Diabetes is a pandemic with over 500 million patients. It is the single most common disease that the human race has ever had to face. From the first day insulin was injected, people try to figure out how to put insulin in a pill.
Oramed's technology allows us to overcome those technical obstacles and to deliver those injections, those peptides, orally.
So we're talking about a safer insulin where patients take a pill.
What we are doing is something that can better the lives of hundreds of millions of people around the world.
Okay, I hope that worked. And now I would just open it up for any questions.
Discover matches all the cash back you earn on your credit card at the end.
I'll open it up for any questions that we may have. Both Prabhuda and myself will be very happy to answer. You're also welcome to log on to the oramed.com website or Oravax website, where we're going to keep on putting updates. Oramed, we also have a list of emails. You can put your email there, and we're going to update different things that we're going to do, like initiation of clinical trials in South Africa and in Israel, and if we're going to do some stuff in the short term in South America. So all of that, you can get the updates and be the first to know.
So thank you very much. It's amazing to have just a pill instead of a needle and against all the variants. So the first question is exactly about that. Could you explain better this issue of protection against all COVID-19 variables?
Prabuddha, please.
Yeah. So I assume the question is that how would this oral vaccine protect against variants? See, even since we have taken 3 antigens, it would, even if spike mutates, it does not mean that no antibody is formed against spike. But what it means is the most potent antibodies are not formed against spike, which had formed earlier. But on the other hand, we have seen extensive sera and blood analysis of people who have suffered from COVID is they not only have spike antibody, they have got potent antibodies against membrane and E proteins, and these last longer than the spike proteins antigens. So what we are enabling is that instead of one effective antigen, which is spike, we have 3. Even if the spike mutates, the antibodies that form against the M and the E will allow the protection against the variants. And we would have, not only we have in vitro proof, which means proof in plates, but animal challenge studies are ongoing, which will prove it conclusively that beyond doubt that this is a possibility.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is, what are the next steps to be taken after studies in human prove viable?
So what we plan on doing is to start the clinical trials, as I said, in Israel and South Africa, and then to move directly into a phase 2. So we are speaking to some countries, for example, Mexico, where potentially we can do a phase 2, get it approved after the phase 2, and then they may want to follow up after approval. There's something that's called also a phase 4. We can actually approve a drug and you can still get data after the approval. So our plan is to try to see which countries can we get the soonest and the fastest the emergency use approval, and to work with the countries or companies within those countries in order to accelerate the approval process. And like I said, most likely in the emerging markets.
How long do you think it's going to get?
It can be relatively fast. It really depends on the countries. It can be that within, in the best scenario, it can be that in less than a year we can get the approvals. Okay, so it really depends on the country, on their ability to work fast with us. We are in touch with a few countries, and there's a lot of interest, and we're in touch with some companies, and there's a very good understanding that this can be the game changer that everybody is waiting for. And when you take it orally, it's safer and easier. So I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to get to it sooner rather than later. But obviously, it's a complicated thing, so no guarantees on exact timing here.
Perfect. So the next question is, it is not uncommon for orally presented antigens to induce tolerance. How do you prevent it and induce a protective response instead of a tolerogenic one?
Prabuddha, go for it.
Yeah, thank you. Very good question, and this is a very interesting one. You see, I'll try and make it as easy as possible because I know we have a general audience, but forgive me, I will have to go a little deep into science. I think it was in 1997, Mondini et al. Published a very seminal paper where it says why we take food, which is proteins. So why don't we develop immunity against food? And versus why would we expect the antigens that we are developing and delivering through a pill to develop is primarily because what he found out was if the antigen is produced in a particulate manner and delivered, it will give an immunogenic response. But if it is broken down into smaller peptides, it will give a tolerogenic response. So if we did not have the Oramed protective pot technology, I can at least, I believe, 95% what would happen. These are proteins, so we would have taken them in. Either they would have been spoiled in the stomach acid, proteins cannot be tolerated there, or the proteases in the gut would have broken them down. And as it would have broken them down, it would have had the same fate as your food or the protein that you chew. You break it down here, you break it down in the stomach, you break it down in your gut. So it's not in its particulate form. Because we have the Oramed technology, which protects the proteins from breaking down, the antigens are presented to the APC or the antigen presenting cells whole. And therefore, we believe that this is the reason we get protective response, because we have taken the sera, we have challenged it with the live virus in PRNT assays, and it is showing protection. And that's how WHO or even USFD approves. So we have shown that. So this is protective rather than tolerogenic, especially in animals. However, we have to see it in humans. That said, this is, you must understand, this is one of the first instances of a triple antigen being delivered orally. So there is also a certain amount of science and learning we will all have to do. But this is the basics of why we believe it will be protective and not go into a tolerogenic one.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is, what will be the cost of each dose and how will it be sold? Will it be sold directly to governments or will it be sold privately?
Okay, so the pricing, I can tell you, is going to be very competitive to the existing injections. Obviously, it's going to vary and depends which country and how we're doing it and must the agreements on the way. So it's not that I can tell you it's going to be $20 for everyone. It's going to be depending on many other things. For example, if I have a partner in the country who does manufacturing, it's going to be one price. If I'm selling it directly from our manufacturing, it's going to be a different price. But at the end of the day, it's going to be very competitive to the existing therapeuticals, definitely those of Pfizer and Moderna. The way we're going to sell it, the ideal way is to sell it to a country. So we do one deal and then the country takes care of it and they're going to distribute to the citizen of the country. But we are also in touch with companies that they want to do private sales as well and other possibilities as well. So it really depends on each of the deals. From our point of view, we're open to all the possibilities. But like I said, the easiest one will be to do one deal per country.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So are you already planning to develop an oral vaccine for the flu or other illnesses?
So it's important to understand that once we show that we can actually deliver a vaccine orally, this should definitely work for other vaccines as well. The challenge with the flu vaccine is that it's a cocktail that's being reinvented or reformulated every year. And therefore, the timelines to manufacturing, a lot of that is relatively short. But yet it can be done. And I think once we're able to get, or maybe we, with the help of Fundada, can come up with a vaccine that will be able to do one-time shot, the same way that we're doing for the COVID. If we can do that to the flu, then I think definitely the oral version will be a preferable one.
Perfect. So they're asking how many pills the person will need. How is the posology?
So with animals, we saw that one pill should suffice with the animal. The way we design the clinical trial is that we're going to do one, and if we see that it's not sufficient, we're going to do two. So we believe there's a very good chance it will be one. But even if it will be two, you have to remember, you have to take another pill. It's not the same big deal as you actually have to go and get the injection. So that's the real advantage. But we will know the answers to that after we're going to get the data from the clinical trial.
And if I
but would anything to add?
If we had enough time, even at least a year or so of testing, we could actually linear it down to one dose if there was no pandemic. But because there is a pandemic and people are dying, I think science can wait. Let's get down to even if it's 2 doses, because it's a question of titrating and waiting and seeing for 3 months what happens. I don't think we have the luxury to wait. What we need to do is get it out there as soon as possible.
I'd like to know just some steps. How did Oramed and Prima's biotech joint? How was the?
Nadav, you want me to give the story?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's a very interesting story, and you see, it was 2013, and Dr. Miriam Kidron was at the bio in Chicago, and she had not known us, and we had not known. We were putting up our booth. She had come to meet somebody else. So she looked up, and we saw somebody who was, coming towards us, and said, "Where are your next door neighbors?" And we said, "We don't know." So she said, "Can I sit down?" And she sat down, and my colleague Nupur looked at her and said, "Would you like some water?" And she said, "Yes." And so then she asked, "What do you do?" We said, we are protein research company. She said, "Oh, is that true? I have 2 proteins." So it is if I would say, it is a meeting managed by the gods. It was an absolute accidental meeting. Miriam had come to meet somebody else. They were not there on time, and we were there. And she came and sat in our booth at the bio, and here we are.
But just to be clear, this collaboration between Primus and Oramed started with the oral insulin project. So it was a multi-millions partnerships between the companies before the COVID-19 came about. After we had established a very close friendship and partnership, it was obvious that we're going to work together on the COVID-19 vaccine as well. But we've been working for the last 9 years on the oral insulin together. You're mute.
Yeah, I saw it. Thank you. So how do you assess the partnership between Israel and India for the project's success?
How do you assess? What do you mean? I'm just not sure I'm understanding the question.
I think, well, the question came ready, but I think the person is asking how is the success of the project between Israel and India, like 2 different cultures.
So in generally, if you look overall, there's been very, very strong partnerships between India and Israel. Modi, the prime minister, when Bibi was the prime minister, he came to visit in Israel. Israel, one of the largest clients for the security export from Israel is actually India. And as you know, that to have a security export, there needs to be some level of intimacy and trust between the countries. And there's been a lot of technology that went from Israel to India. And people, I think, will be surprised, but we have an image from myself and others. Many times we think of India as just low-level mass production, almost like a second to China. But what I've came to learn that while Primus is one of the leading companies in India, there is a lot of innovation. There's a lot of new science that's coming out of India. And because of the no language barrier, because the Indians speak English and obviously the Israelis have to speak English, and I think there's a very comfortable mentality on the Indian side, I think we're seeing more and more business being done between the 2 countries. There's some different trust that the government puts between the countries. And I think if nobody is a prophet, but I think we're only going to see this strengthening with the time. I'm going to see more and more collaboration between the 2 countries.
Absolutely. If I can add something here, is historically, if you see, there has been a great trade. I mean, where I come from, for the eastern part of India, it's Calcutta. There's a very healthy Jewish community there, as well as in Mumbai. And they have been there for thousands of years. So there is a very interesting, as you say, 2 cultures, very old, ancient cultures, deeply spiritual at very different ends. And if I can take a philosophical view of this, is first Nadav and I, as respective leaders in our company, got to trust each other. Once we got to trust each other, then we can take risks together. I think that is the foundation of our relationship. And it is similarly, what is the relationship between countries, but relationship between people? If we have the similar goals, similar value system, and similar sort of targets, we will make progress.
Thank you. So we have a question from Juliana Kreiser. She says, I'm not sure if you are aware, Brazil has had an oral vaccine for polio for, she said, I'm not expert at all. How is it different from the one you are developing?
So if you see, there are two parts to the oral polio. There's the Salk vaccine and the Sabin vaccine. There are two types of, one is injectable and the other one is the attenuated live poliovirus, which means the virus is still live, but you reduce its effectiveness. Many people don't want to take it, but in India we've been extremely successful because the polio has been eradicated out of India primarily because of the efforts done by the medical institutions on this. What you do is you give it in, and polio virus is very, very it's a very sturdy virus. So it passes through, it goes and colonizes in your gut. So from there you get the immunity. And how does the community get immunity is, if you see, the community immunity is through the feces and it goes into the water within that thing and it spreads, and everyone, the entire community starts getting immunity. And that's how the success of oral polio vaccine has been. Here, our vaccine is totally different. It's not a heat killed or an attenuated live virus. It is the virus-like particle, which means we have recreated artificially the coat of the virus or the surface of the virus. So it cannot mutate, it cannot propagate, it cannot infect. And it is a true protein vaccine, which goes and gives you the immunity through its protein and the antigen presentation, not by propagating in your gut.
Yes, what I think is really interesting is that it is a pill, so you can mail people the vaccine, isn't it? Yeah, because you don't have to go somewhere to get the vaccine. You don't need a professional to give you the vaccine. You just follow.
The only issue that could be is that some governments may want to monitor who's taking it and who's not. So potentially, unlike now that you need someone to give it, you can say basically any place, any pharmacy, any super sol, anything, whatever. You come there, you swallow, they feel that someone else, a third party, fills up that you took it. And it's very easy. You come to a place and you show them you took it, they write it down. If a country wants it, some countries don't want it.
Yeah, yes. And do you know how many people are afraid of needles? Do you have this number?
So they did a survey in the United States. There are about 19 million people in the United States that are not taking the vaccine as an injection, but if it was available oral, they would have taken it. Just in the United States, 19 million people will take the oral and not taking the injection.
Wow, that's huge.
Huge. It can be a game changer, even if it were the same vaccine, a game changer just because of the number of people that are getting vaccinated.
And I don't know if you talked about it, but it's possible to put more than one vaccine in one pill, like a vaccine against flu and COVID, for example.
Theoretically, yes, but we know in immunology, and again, I'm not an immunologist, I'm a protein engineer. In immunology, it says if you overload the system with too many antigens, you may get a backlash or a reducing, because your system may think of it as an attack on the system, and it will reduce the immune response. But that could be a target, no worries.
So any age restrictions?
So in the protocol that we have, I think we did it to 69 or 65. I think maybe we did 69, and we got back a request from the Ministry of Health to reduce this to 65. But we know that this is a very safe medication, so the restrictions will come from the Ministry of Health in Israel, South Africa, or elsewhere. But obviously, the idea is that once we go out there, people will take it at any age, because actually, the older you are, the more you are in a need for the COVID-19 vaccine.
They asking about animal testings.
We've done a tremendous amount of different animals, from mice to till the pigs, and the results were excellent. And that's why we believe, and we're going to show it now in humans, that the transformation to humans should be, the immune system that worked on the animals should be very much the same on the humans, and that's what we intend to show very soon.
Perfect. And so you said you are working on coming here to South America. How it is going?
So we are in touch with some countries, and we will be very happy to be in touch with other relevant countries. I really hope that we will be able to finalize some agreements relatively in the short term. And we love South America, and we think this has a lot of potential, given everything that's going on there, that this could be the target for us to get the emergency use approval and to be able to supply to South America ASAP. We obviously will need the collaboration of the relevant people in the governments and potentially the companies who will be the instrument to make it happen.
They're asking how many people should be tested.
So what we're doing right now is we're doing a very, very small phase 1. So it's going to be like 25 in Israel, 25 in South Africa. And the idea here is really to show that it's safe and that it works. Then we're going to move into a phase 2. So for example, we checked into Mexico. So Mexico, it's not going to be such a large phase 2. And then potentially you can get the approval and to move forward. So it really will depend on the country and their requirements. The more the country has the need and the more they understand that this can be the right solution, the less people will need to be tested. And obviously, if you're going to go to a country that got already enough vaccines from Pfizer, and so on and so forth, obviously, they may be a little more rigid about the number of people and the timelines.
Yeah, it's a great solution for poor countries, because we are talking a lot about the inequality of vaccines in our days, because you have developed countries that have a lot of vaccines and poor countries that don't have vaccines at all against COVID, I'm saying. And so your solution probably is very good for that also. The costs are amazing.
Right, absolutely.
So, when do they think they will be able to get FDA's approval to take it to the rest of the world?
So we are in touch with the FDA. Actually, we're very encouraged by the FDA response, and we are planning on starting a phase 2 with the FDA post this phase 1 that we intend to do in Israel and South Africa. But I want to re-emphasize one point. The FDA is relevant for the United States, and most countries accept the FDA as the supreme ruler when it comes to regulatory. And therefore, if the FDA gave you the approval, they will give it as well. What we want to do is we don't want to just wait on the FDA. We want to go to these countries and tell them, this is what we have. It's safe, it's efficient, it can save your population. Do what other countries did during the COVID-19 peak days. Give it a fast approval even before the FDA. This is our goal with the emerging markets, and I think it's very much an achievable goal.
Perfect. Do you want to add something? We have still 10 minutes, something that we didn't cover here.
Prabuddha, anything from your side?
I think we've covered the safety. It's very safe. I think that's something which everyone should take home. It's easy to manufacture. The cost of goods will be extremely competitive. We have shown antibody response to all the 3 parts of the immune system, IgG, IgM, and IgA. It protects you in the mucosa. and the protection is long term. You also have seen T cell response, and we believe that in the coming few weeks, we will have the challenge study data, which would really blow this extremely high, because then this would be perhaps from a second generation may become one of the leading sort of tools against COVID.
So Alberto Blay is asking, when are you expecting to finalize all regulatory studies?
In which country? Like I said, it really will be depending on the country. We hope that in the next few months, hopefully in around the end of the first quarter of 2020, to start in some, again, I'm going to talk more about South America, potentially start the trial in South America, and then depending on what will the Ministry of Health in that country will define, that will be the length and the size of the trial. So just to give you an idea, if Brazil will tell us we want 2,000 or 3,000 people, that's relatively a very fast trial, and then they can give us emergency use approval at the end of it. That can be something that can be achieved probably in less than a year, and then potentially you can give it to the population. But that depends on the leadership to be able to make that call. And we now want to converse and to communicate with different countries' leaderships in order to see and to try in a few places together where we can get it the fastest.
So do you want to add something? Because I think we are...
I would just add that I think the very important takeaway from it is, besides just the Oramed and Oravac stories, which I would love for everyone to follow and to be part of it, and we have a lot of pride, that this is something that was developed in Israel and with the collaboration with Primas. I think the most important takeaway is that there's hope. We shouldn't be so stressed about this COVID-19. Technologies are emerging. We are going to overcome it. And what you saw here today is an example of something that is going to be so simple, and it's going to change our lives, and we're going to go back to normal life. So we can just sit back, enjoy the ride of our lives, because the good things are coming our way.
Oh, such a good thing to hear, to listen. Thank you so much, Bril. Thank you for your time and for your knowledge and for your project. And Shabbat Shalom to everybody, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much. Take care, and it's been lovely. It's absolute an honor to be presenting to you all here. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you, Nadav, for getting me looped in. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Prabhuda.
you.
All
Thank
the
you.
best.
All the best. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.